Monday, July 6th, 2020. It is right after a fantastic Independence weekend. I'm gonna, every once in a while on this channel, I'm gonna give some thoughts about different things. This weekend, for me, my biggest thing was the release of Hamilton on Disney+. And unless you were living under a rock, it was advertised everywhere. And I was super excited. I had never seen the whole thing before or even listened to the whole album. And I know people talked about it really a ton. So I was super excited to finally see it. For me, when it comes to musicals, I prefer to watch it before I actually listen to the music, because otherwise I'm not going to know what's going on as much. So this video will be all about that. Now so in case you don't know, I'm going to give just a little brief synopsis, just kind of to describe how the film is set up. So, as most musicals are, it was divided into 2 acts. And the first act dealt with Hamilton and his involvement in the American Revolution. Mostly how he was a right-hand man to General Washington. And this is important for later in the film because in Act 2, it talks a lot more about his involvement in the Constitutional Convention and his writings of the Federalist Papers, and a lot more of the power dynamics involved there. So once I got done watching the film, I watched it on its release date. I went on that Friday, and so it's been a couple days, and I've been able to sleep on it a little more. What initially stood out to me was, once I got done with it, and I don't think this would have stuck out until I finished the film, was that, so in case you don't know, in the realm of musical theater, there is a definite formula for how to basically write. And that is, you start off with just plain old talking, okay? Just like I'm doing right now. Once emotions start to get too much for talking, you begin to sing. And once emotions become too much for singing, you have dance. Okay? So it follows this very, there's a definite formula to this. You can see this in musicals like West Side Story, even one of my favorites, Something Rotten, stuff like that. For me at least, what I picked up on was a complete reversal of this formula in Hamilton. And I don't think this was as pronounced in the first half, but it was definitely pronounced in the second half, especially right in his duel with Aaron Burr. By the way, there might be spoilers, so if you haven't seen it for yourself yet, well, you should have opened a history textbook by this point, okay? But in his duel with Aaron Burr, this is really where it's pronounced. So for the most part, in most of the musical, they are singing and, dancing, I would say. There wasn't really any major dance breaks that I can remember, so they kind of combined singing and dancing together. But the most emotional moments that I remembered, especially right before he dies in the duel with Aaron Burr, is his basically soliloquy during that whole thing. There's no music, it's just him. There's a little bit of rhythm, but I think for the most part it's a recitative. And what this kind of reminds me of is, take any concerto, and there's typically going to be a long drawn out cadenza. It could be right at the beginning, it could be right at the end. I know I did the Korsakov trombone concerto last summer at the Sioux City Municipal Band, at one of the Sioux City Municipal Band concerts. And there's a giant cadenza right at the end, and you can tell it's like going to be like right at the end. And that's like where all the musicality really comes out in that concerto. And that's what I thought happened in Hamilton. It was kind of that last soliloquy, or his last soliloquy, I can call it, in that duel. It was basically his cadenza. And I thought it was a really cool, like, they did it really well on being able to flip the script, because it stripped down what was already established as normal for this musical, where there's not as much emotion. So that's what I really liked it. Now, as I said for this, I would not have noticed that if it wasn't for it later in the film, and specifically the second half. Another musical that deals with the Founding Fathers is the musical 1776, which that one is all about the Declaration of Independence, getting that through the Continental Congress and eventually signed on July 4th. And it's all about John Adams and his politics, as opposed to Hamilton and all of his politics. And one thing I thought I was missing from Hamilton, and this is just totally my opinion, this isn't meant to be taken as gospel or anything, but I thought between 1776 and Hamilton, I thought where Hamilton was lacking, and maybe it's just because I've seen 1776 a bunch of times and was expecting it to be like that, was Hamilton didn't weave as much, it didn't focus on the relationships as much as 1776 did. And I was really missing that. What I mean by that is, in 1776, it is established right from the start, but I think even in the second song, that John Adams, he misses his wife like crazy. And he doesn't want to be there anymore in Philadelphia than he has to, but at the same time, you also have established that he is a patriot and will be there until the job is done. 1776, it's not as well established, perhaps because he's not married yet, so he's not necessarily tied down. Hamilton is kind of a free soul at the beginning, at least from my first impressions. And I think that I really wanted to see, more of a settled down person. But again, that's maybe not historically accurate. So maybe that's I just don't necessarily like how the history was of his life. But only because I wanted to see more of the relationship aspect. And that is constantly woven into 1776. There's another moment where Thomas Jefferson, he's in 1776, where Thomas Jefferson is put on the Declaration Committee, and he's similar to John Adams, where he's like, well, I want to go and, go snuggle with my wife, basically, just like you do, Mr. Adams. And Adams is like, okay, yeah, I know, we both want to, but we got a job to do. And I think that's, seeing the relationships play out more there, interwoven with the politics, is what I really like in 1776. My opinion could obviously change with Hamilton. I think this was my first time watching it, okay? So I'm not doing a direct comparison between 1776 and Hamilton justice, because, well, I've seen 1776 way before Hamilton ever even came out. I've basically been humming those tunes at least since middle school, I can remember. Maybe elementary, but I've known that musical for quite some time. My dad knows it like the back of his head. He was in it back in his younger days. And so I think what would be best for this type of review, I'm definitely going to add Hamilton to my annual tradition of films to watch during Independence Weekend. And I think, ask me again once I've I might review this topic in, possibly 10 years, once I've seen the musical more times. I'm not saying Hamilton was bad. I think it was just my personal feelings on what I was wanting in it, based on another musical. So, feel free to completely disagree with me. These are just my own personal ramblings. I only have a tiny bullet list of things I'm talking about. Otherwise, I have no script. Those are my thoughts on Hamilton. So make sure to leave a comment, hit the like button, and subscribe for more content like this. I think I'm gonna start making more of these just talking videos, so you get a little more idea of things I like, things I maybe don't necessarily really like. Leave a comment on what topics you would like me to do more on. Make sure to also check out the Reddit. I'm gonna start posting some memes. There hasn't been a lot of activity really on there yet, so I might start posting some memes there, so we can make that sort of a community for that as well. Have a wonderful and hope you had a wonderful Independence weekend, and I can't wait to make more of these. Thank you.